I'd like to ask you, I want to bring it back to Brexit and what we're seeing out of Brussels. And we heard then from the Prime Minister, Theresa May, essentially not giving enough details when it comes to the main commitments, the divorce bill, the border on Northern Ireland, and EU citizens' rights in the UK. That being said, we had Tusk saying that a green light on internal phase one has been given. Where do you think things are moving forward?
The officials I talked to in both the British government and the European Commission are fairly optimistic that in December, the EU will declare sufficient progress has been made, which means that the UK and the EU can start to talk about the transitional arrangements and the future trading relationship. Though, of course, that's not certain. Mrs. May is going to have to give a bit more ground on the money and be more precise about the commitments she will undertake financially. But I think there's a chicken and egg problem. The British don't want to make commitments on the money without knowing they're going to get a deal on talking about trade in return and the transition. And the EU doesn't want to make that commitment unless they're sure they're going to get some money, more money out of the Brits. So it's a chicken and egg problem. Both sides will move forward at the same time in December. That's quite likely. I have to say the real story, though, is a different story. The real story is that the big problem ahead is the future relationship. The British haven't yet worked out what to ask for in the future relationship. And the EU is going to be much tougher than the British realise, according to several people I've spoken to in the European Commission.
Well, that being said, Theresa May is on shaky ground back home, it has to be said. She's very vulnerable at this stage, so will she know what to ask for?
Well, that's a fair point. Certainly the more moderate people in her government, like Philip Hammond in the Treasury, would like to keep Britain in not the single market, that's not feasible, but something close to the single market, so Britain is economically integrated with the EU after Brexit. But the more sovereignist, hardline Eurosceptic faction in the Conservative Party doesn't really care so much about economic integration and trade. They want to maximise sovereignty and resist future rulings by the European Court of Justice and resist EU regulations and resist making payments to the EU. So they would go for a much harder Brexit. And Mrs. May is going to have to forge a compromise between the two factions in her government. And I think my guess is she's going to ask for something that the technocrats call Canada Plus, meaning something rather like the EU's free trade agreement with Canada, but plus because it'll be better than that, because the Canada deal doesn't do a lot for services markets. And Britain, certainly being a service-based economy, needs access to European services markets.